helping you pass an NASM CPT as quickly as you can. Belt buckle trainer and show up fitness, fastest growing certification in the world, best partnerships with Lifetime and Equinox, but you came across as too late. But don't you worry, your pretty little butt cheeks. We can help you pass NASM. Helped over 5,000 people pass. Focus on the guide. This is an example of a tutoring session. The lovely Maria will help you pass NASM as quickly as you can, but this is an example of what the tutoring looks like. We have a PDF. If you leave a 5-star review for the podcast, we will send that over to you. It's gonna help relieve so much stress, and you can thank the belt buckle trainer for showing up. Have a great day. So I'm going to review a free PDF that we're going to be giving. So our NASM guide has helped significantly more than 5,000 people pass NASM, ACE, ISSA, and whatever, but we've helped numerous people pass this. And the last thing that you want to do is waste time. I just got an email yesterday from someone, and they bought my guide in January of this year, and they're still going through it. And that's exactly what you should not be doing, because you need to be learning in an environment where there's actually, equipment, and asking questions and asking someone. So there's a program here, you have a hinge, you have a push, and you're doing this. Why are you doing that? So this client has shoulder pain. Why did you do that screen? That's how you build the confidence. And I just did a podcast with one of the girls who was in the Atlanta seminar, and she's training at Anytime Fitness. And she was like, I don't feel confident to train someone yet. And I said, get to a seminar. And that's why she came down there, and I paired her up with other trainers, and she trained people. She got to get trained by experienced trainers, and her confidence was so elevated. So she went back, and now she's able to confidently design programs for different bodies and then start doing it. And so from our guide, I've created a 15-page that's not out anywhere else. I put it into my book. So the next volume of my book that's going to be out is going to have 25 questions that will prep anyone to pass it. So it's like my book, I want to be like, you want to pass NASM? Get my book. You want to pass ACE? Get my book. And then when you pass it and you're done, you're like, oh shit, I got this big old textbook. Let's start reading other stuff. And then it's just going to kind of fill in the gaps that these certifications don't provide. And so I'm going to be giving away a part of that within this PDF. And so this is what I created. And we can, I'll essentially tell people that you can get this if you leave us a 5-star review. And so just to get more views on the podcast, because the podcast, it gets a good amount of exposure, but we want more. And so I go into our tutoring and the value of getting a tutor, but then I start with, okay, here are the main topics that you need to know for the exam. So the human movement sciences, planes of motion, orientation, patterns, behavioral change, assessment process, movement compensations, which are really big on, OPT if you're NASM, IFT if you're ACE, train, energy and nutrition systems, and then the key terms that they're going to have. And so I really break those down. But for this one, I just start with kind of giving you a taste of what it would be like. So I start with human movement sciences, so planes of motion, orientation, movement patterns. Kinesiology is the study of human movement. You need to have a very strong foundation in movement science to understand the questions in these textbooks. Watch the videos below, flashcard words, and understand the following questions. So what plane of motion is a chin-up in? So when we do a chin-up, what is that?
So we're here. It would be the lats.
So that's the muscle that's working, yes.
Oh.
It's the plane of motion.
Oh, wait, then I didn't understand the question.
What is the plane of motion when you do a chin-up?
Oh, a chin-up. I'm sorry. I was looking at which muscle is the most superior. Sorry.
Yeah, right,
I got ahead of myself. Okay. What plane? We are doing the frontal.
So this is a very common answer that people will choose is frontal because of forward. But that's why we teach what is happening at the humerus concentrically. The humerus is coming behind the body, and that is extension. What is the definition of extension? Sagittal plane of motion.
Oh, yeah.
What is the definition of frontal?
It's here.
Imaginary line bisecting the body.
Bisecting.
Into anterior and posterior halves, allowing for a B and A deduction.
Okay.
And so the pull-up would be frontal. A chin up would be sagittal. And so when you are able to look at the skeleton, this little guy back there, and you say, okay, well, when you're pulling yourself up, this bone, which is the humerus, it's coming back. It's called extension. When I extend my humerus, that's in the sagittal plane of motion. Whereas when I do a pronated pull-up, my humerus is coming to the midline, which is adduction. When I adduct, I'm in the frontal plane. Whereas when I do like a chest fly, and that's why we're so big into the actions, because when you teach someone the actions, like we do a show up, it's like, this is horizontal adduction of the humerus. So if I'm horizontally adducting, I'm in the transverse plane. The transverse plane of motion is defined as an imaginary line bisecting the body into superior and inferior halves, allowing for rotation. It's kind of confusing, but when you understand what rotation is, horizontal adduction, external, internal rotation, and scaption. So anytime those actions are happening, it would then be the transverse plane of motion. So other common ones that we would see, can you name three other exercises that are in the sagittal plane?
In the sagittal plane, it would be walking lunges. And then we'd have bicep curls.
Yeah. And we're sagittal creatures. So when we run, when we jump, when we do a squat, a hinge, a step up, a bicep curl, tricep extension, a plank, flexion of the spine, those are all sagittal exercises. I always tell people, when in doubt, choose sagittal. When it comes to frontal, it's going to be mirroring this. So just think of frontal as pull-up. So what are exercises that look like a pull-up? You're going to be
jumping jack, lateral lunges,
lateral stuff, side
lateral
raises. Yep, military press. Those would all be in the frontal plane of motion. And then we have the transverse, which is when we're most likely to hurt ourselves because we don't do a lot of transverse stuff. That's rotational. So NASM could ask you, your client is performing a cable rotation. And as we know, they would have something on there that would say, what is the end position of the foot? That's one that they like to say, because the end position, you would have triple extension. So you're going to be doing your cable rotation. And let's say that we're coming here and we would go rotate. So I have hip extension, knee extension, plantar flexion, which would all be considered extension. So then another question could say, what plane of motion is the same? And because I'm rotating, it would be transverse. Whereas just pushing down would be sagittal. But if I were to come down here like a fly, that would be frontal. And so understanding the actions, and there was a great post that was done from John Russin. John and I just did a podcast the other day, and he was talking about why trainers don't make this into a career. And we're very aligned with our methodologies. And I have it I've had it on my board for forever up there at the top. Why people don't succeed: the business, people, trade skills. And that's exactly what he said. The top 5, and I would disagree with what he said. I would say the top 1%. If you want to be in that 1%, have the foundation of movement owned. That's movement competence. Understanding anatomy, which begins with this stuff right here, orientation, the actions, what's going on, because that is what translates into programming. So now I know that this is adduction. Cool. Well, what muscle adducts the humerus? And that's what we teach you, where it's okay, the lats, if it's behind the body, posterior deltoid, if it's in front of the body, it's going to be more pec major. Pec's broken up into clavicular region, sternal region, costal region. It depends on where you're going, some triceps, subscapularis. When you understand the muscles that work with the biomechanics, then the programming is so easy, because I just program the pattern based on the client's goals. So it's like you walk forward to be able to go backwards. And unfortunately, what these certifications do is they don't teach you that. They just give you a template for programming. So you're going to do a total body exercise versus squat, curl, press on a stability ball. Why? They don't tell you it's total body, it's stabilization. But why is it stabilization? Why the fuck are we choosing that exercise? It doesn't make sense. Well, it's just you're supposed to. So that's why so many trainers get confused, is because they don't know the why behind it. And you should be able to have a conversation. If I were to say, you're doing a stability ball press, why the fuck are you doing that? You should be able to say that, oh, the client came up to me and they wanted to improve stability and they love the stability ball and they wanted to do that exercise. Then I'd say, great. Guess what I've never had in my entire life is a client say that.
Anyone tell you. Yeah.
So then you have to understand movement, and all this circus shit that you see today is really people trying to play the game of, oh, my client they want to have fun when they work out. Your clients want results. You can have fun and you can show them some new things, but I've never had a client come to me and say, I want the whole entire workout just to be fun. My clients come to me and they say, I want to get stronger. I want to get out of pain. I want to look great naked. But essentially what they want: lose fat, stronger, whatever. Those are the three things. And I've been doing this for 20 years. And that was the other thing that John talked about: experience. Being experienced with the right foundation of movement and having those business skills, you are the 1% of earners. And there's a podcast, there was a YouTube I was watching the other day of some NASM dipshit, and he was going over how much you can make and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, trainers can make like, 50, 60 years in the first couple of years, $60,000. We just had a trainer complete our program, and he's working part-time, and in his first year of training, part-time. So he has a full-time job. He's a race car mechanic, F1, like that's just crazy stuff. Part-time personal trainer. He made $55,000. So you're taking someone who's part-time and they're doing what full-time trainers, NASM I say, are doing in 2 or 3 years. We have Joe, who within 12 months got hired at Lifetime, got promoted to management, and he's going to clear $125,000 in year 1 as a personal trainer. So when you focus on the business, the programming, which is the trade and anatomy and movement competency, and then you sprinkle in those people skills, you can be the top 1%. And so then it comes down to, like we were saying earlier, is planes of motion. So the next one, which you got right, which muscle is most superior? And well, we didn't actually go over this question. So superior means what?
That it's like how do I describe it? The one that takes over the most. I'm trying to find like the terms for it. You make me so nervous, Chris.
Okay, that's all right. That's how you get through it. So
yeah, I was like, I feel so intimidated, even though like I know it. It's just like
okay, but that's what it's like when you're So that's the same way. Like and all we want are people to be confident.
Yes, so this is why I'm putting myself in this position with you every week.
So superior just means, think of it as above.
Okay, I was going to say it's superior on the body. We're speaking about the body. Where is it? It's superior on the body. It's top part of the body.
Very good. So I think in our terminology today, you'll hear things like inferior, like you're not as good as me, you're below me.
Yes. So
that's below. Yes. And so when we look at anatomy, we have a rotator cuff muscle that's called the supraspinatus, and we have one that's called the infraspinatus.
Yes.
We have the scapula on the posterior side. One is above, one is below. Supra would be the most superior out of these. The vastus lateralis is the side quad muscle, whereas the latissimus dorsi is a very large back muscle. So knowing where these muscles are is important, but knowing their actions, that's what we really test on with the soft tissue cert. Because if you want to talk to physical therapists, and if you ever went to a physical therapist and try to tell them that something's overactive and they have upper cross syndrome, they would literally laugh at you. Like, we set our trainers who are certified with SHOW up for success because they go and have conversations with therapists and they get them on their team. And so you should be able to recognize where these muscles are, but also what they do. And that's why that soft tissue certification is so important to have, because it just levels you up. Because we should be thinking, as a newer trainer, you don't need to know this for the exams. You just need to know, where is your lats? And in NASM vocabulary, it's overactive. Where's your vastus lateralis? It's a quad muscle. In NASM vocabulary, it's overactive. They're not going to ask you about the rotator cuff muscles.
Yeah. And that's where I'm at right now, my level 1. training, learning the 8 core patterns and their actions, and it's confusing, but I'm getting there with Megan's videos and the whole shebang that you provide.
Great. Great.
It's helping me understand the how to dumb it down for the tutoring clients, as silly as that sounds. Like after I actually understand it away from NASM, so understanding it in the show of fitness side, then it like allows me to actually be able to explain the NASM stuff much easier, which is crazy because it's harder to learn. But then, well, maybe that's why, because it's harder to learn, then this becomes easy.
So when you're essentially learning Spanish 3, Spanish 4, but you're teaching Spanish 1. And when you teach Spanish 1, that sometimes the tricks that you give don't apply to what you're learning in Spanish 3 or 4. And when I'm having a conversation with someone on my level, Spanish 3 or 4, we're going to have a certain dialect that level 1 Spanish is not going to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same this. It's like, okay, so if you're going to try to pass your NASM, you need to know that your lats are overactive. Well, what does that mean? It doesn't really matter what it means. You just need a fucking foam roll and stretch. That's what you need to know. So those are overactive. That means the opposite are going to be underactive. It means your mid back, your mid traps. We're going to want to strengthen those with a 4-2-1-1 tempo. And what that looks like is the eccentric is 4, 2 is isometric, 1 is concentric, 1 is isometric. So if they were to ask you, your client has upper cross syndrome. Which of the following muscles would you want to foam roll? And so you need to know that foam rolling is associated with overactive, tight, strong, tonic muscles. So that's going to be your lats, your teres major. Those are the muscles that you'd be looking for. When it comes to underactive, we want to strengthen those with that 4-2-1-1 tempo. So which your client is performing the overhead squat assessment. I always like to joke, like the dumbest fucking screen in the world, but that's what you have to know. So when they're doing it and their arms fall forward, which of the following exercises would be most appropriate? So all that question is asking me is, where would I strengthen the weak area? So the lats are overactive, but they're not asking about the lats. So I'm not going to be doing a cable row because that's going to strengthen my lats. What I want to do is some type of band pull apart. I'd want to be doing a ball combo 1 or 2 because those are the exercises that they love for stabilization. The TRX row would be what they want because that's stabilization and with a pronated grip. Mm-hmm. And so then I think it just gives you, when you take the exam, I've literally had people take the NASM exam and finish it in less than 20 minutes because you put that hat on and you know exactly what they're asking, then you can just kind of check it off. So it's like, get through it, because the hardest part is going to be getting this out of your brain, because this isn't going to do anything for your career. It's like, you can't get a refund. Okay, well, you just got to power through it. And that's why our guide has helped so many people, is because you just focus on what the test is. And that's what I said earlier. There's a girl who literally spent 11 months reading a textbook, thinking that's going to prepare her for this field. And I said, well, how do you feel right now? She's like, I'm really overwhelmed and confused. No shit. Our career is working with programming and selling, and you got none of that. And so now what's going to happen is you're going to go out there and you're going to be scaring people, essentially, because you're going to say, oh, let me do an overhead squat on you. Oh, you have an overactive this and underactive this, and you have pronation distortion syndrome. And they'll be like, what the fuck? I sound like I'm a fragile snowflake. I just want to get a jacked chest. Well, we got to put you on a stability ball first. The fuck you do? Go get them big. Go get them jacked. Know why you're going to get them jacked. And so it can be frustrating. And I really do feel for people going through this, because I do want to help them become successful. But the methodologies are old school. And so when it comes to the movement system for NASM vocabulary, you got to know the 3, which are going to be the muscular,
And this is one that it's just like the last topic that we talk about, the type 1 and the type 2 muscle fibers. I don't know if it's because kind of like it starts here. This is one of the ones that will make me stumble as well.
So the chain begins with the brain. The brain is going to be the central nervous system, of which we have the subdivisions of the CNS and then the PNS, peripheral nervous system, which is everything coming out of the spine. That's what starts the movement via motor unit. I think it's a good term to write down, is a motor unit is a neuron and all the associated muscle fibers that it innervates. because the nervous system will then talk to the muscular system. So if I want to do a push, my brain is going to it's going to send a message via my nerves to the pectoralis minor and major, concentrically accelerating horizontal abduction. So that's one system, the nervous system. Two system, muscular system. But the muscular system is then going to move the bones, which is the skeletal system. So those are the three main systems that they'll ask you about. You might get a question or two on endocrine, which is hormones, but that's pretty simple. It's just anabolic and catabolic. Anabolic being growth hormone, insulin growth like factor, insulin and testosterone. Whereas catabolic breakdown, it's going to be cortisol and your catecholamines, which will be norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine. But they're not going to get into much on the endocrine system. It's more of these ones. And they could ask you like the physiology stuff. What is the basic unit of the muscular system? That's the sarcomere. What is the basic unit of the nervous system? That's the neuron. And what is the basic unit of the skeletal system, which is the osteon? And really, I would say the question you probably get from the physiology standpoint is we have questions on this that help people, but they'll ask about the divisions of the muscle. So we have the epimysium, the paramysium, and the endomysium. So which one is the most superficial, which is on top? Which one is the most deep, which would be the endomysium? And then inside that, you had the actin and myosin. So which one of those myofilaments is larger? That's going to be myosin. But that's very, very complex physiology. They keep it pretty simple like this stuff right here. So just know that the human movement system is going to be muscles, bones, and the brain. That's all you need to know.
That's a good way to put it, where
and so then
I don't confuse them.
Yeah, you don't want to, because I could just see that you get into those chapters and stuff, and you spend a couple of weeks really trying to understand it. And it's like, just take the most superficial stuff, move on, because you're not going to test it much on it. You're doubling down with the planes of motion. So horizontal adduction, what is the prime mover for this movement? So prime mover is agonist. Agonist means that is the main muscle that's working. And I like to kind of break it down as like a basketball team, where it's like you have the main player and then the second player. So the main player is going to score the most points. The second one is going to be helping out the main player, but is not going to be scoring as much. So that's the agonist would be the main player. The secondary player would be the synergist. They help out the main player. And the opposite would be the defense. And the defense in this regard is the antagonist. So it's the opposite. So if I'm doing horizontal adduction, which is in the transverse plane, horizontal abduction, which is also in the transverse plane, is the opposite. And when I horizontally abduct, that's going to be my posterior deltoid. So the agonist, when I push, is going to be the pec major. The synergist would be the triceps at the elbow. The rotator cuff is going to be stabilizing. So that's all NASM is going to ask you, is the agonist, the synergist, the stabilizer, and the antagonist. So just remember the antagonist is the opposite.
Okay. So and then real quick for me on the level 1 side, on this one, can you, it's so confusing because it's like, it was elbow and then it was the back.
Yeah. So when you look at the movement that's taking place, and this is not NASM. So NASM makes you memorize the agonist synergist. You have to look at the movement that's taking place. So when I push, there's 3 joints that are really working. The biggest joint is going to be the shoulder joint, and that's going to be the pec. So that's the main mover. That's the agonist. The elbow is also moving. It's extending. That's going to be your synergist, triceps. But then we have the scapula, which is coming off the back, which is called protraction. So the elbow is working, shoulder's working, scapula's working. And the scapula is protraction, which would be your serratus anterior. So a NASM question is going to ask you, your client is performing a stability ball press. Which of the following would be the agonist? And that's going to be your pec major. Your client was doing a push-up. Which of the following would be the stabilizing muscle? Remember, any stabilizer for upper body, rotator cuff. I don't care if you're pushing or pulling, it's always rotator cuff. For lower body stabilizer, the TVA, transverse abdominis. And the agonist is just the opposite exercise. So if I'm doing a push, opposite is a pull. So your lats or your posterior deltoid would be the antagonist for a push. Military press, the agonist deltoid. So the opposite, the antagonist would be your lats.
Okay.
And any lower body stabilizing muscle would be your core. Upper body stabilizing rotator cuff.
Stabilizers.
And so behavior change, you got to get a lot of stuff, stages of change, SMART goals, and so forth. Now, which of the following is not a SMART goal? Specific, measurable, actionable, timely. And so knowing those SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. I think it would be good to almost have, like, you can make one of your tutoring sessions just acronyms and vocab words. You could have like flashcards, and you could say, I'm going to send you these after our session today, or I'll record it and send it to you as well. But maybe you have 15 words on a flashcard, and you take it out and you say, okay, first one, SMART. What does that stand for? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Great, good job. Take another one out. Phase 1 of the OPT model, acute variables. You need to know 4211. We got to know we're going to static stretch. We're going to foam roll for 20 to 40 seconds. We're going to be doing 12 to 20 repetitions at a 50 to 70% of 1 rep max. And then you choose another one out, and then it just says latissimus dorsi. So they should be able to tell me where it is and if it's overactive or underactive. And the lats would be overactive on the posterior side. You take another one out, and it says SA node. And they need to know that SA node is the pacemaker of the heart. Great, good job. Take out another one. Anterior tibialis. Front calf muscle, it's going to be underactive. So they just,
that's a good one.
Even just doing like maybe 10 minutes of tutoring like that, because what that does is the exam is very similar to that. In the sense that they're going to ask you a heart question, then they're going to ask you an OPT question. They're going to ask you an overactive, underactive. And the way that we typically study, we go onto some dipshit's page and we get their guide and we literally read it just like that. But like with our guide, we tell you what to focus on. Then we throw all these curveballs at you, and then you're ready to take it and pass it in a timely manner, because you don't want to waste time in chapter 7 or nutrition, because they're going to ask you literally 2-3 questions. They're a smart company. They are owned by $1 trillion mega force. And so they know that you are a widget. And what makes them more money is a widget that gets 2, that gets a bundle, that gets a recertification for life. And so if you got their CPT, as they do a great job with, they're going to send you 1,000 emails. Black Friday sale, 60% off our nutrition coach. And you go, oh my God, I don't remember any information about nutrition. I want to become a nutrition coach.
I actually got congratulations. You've been a certified trainer with us for a year. What did they give me? Their balanced training program for free.
There you go. That's a pretty smart thing, though, from a marketing standpoint. You want people to get your product more. And so, like, now the business side of it, if you were to be working at a Lifetime or an Equinox, respectable gyms, they don't really teach you that it takes about 7 points of contact really to get the comfort level of the client to purchase you, because that's what they're buying. They're buying us. We're the product. And so by giving you something for free, maybe you get some CEUs, but I guarantee afterwards they're going to say, hey, sign up for the NASM 1, which is only $35 a month, and you get all of these CEUs, because then they have you on a subscription service for the rest of your life.
I've gotten those already several times.
Exactly. So then if you look at it as a trainer, if you kind of take some of these gold nuggets from NASM and you go out there and say, okay, it's about points of contact. I'm not going to sell you right now. I'm going to go and talk to someone and say, hey, how's it going? I saw you doing this with your arm. Everything okay? Yeah. I kind of jacked it up. Oh, well, guess what? I know some soft tissue techniques because I have one of the best certifications with Show Up Fitness. And let me screen you real quick. And you screen them and they're fine to implement these. And they go, okay, great. Let's get in the infraspinatus. And you do that technique and you breathe through it. And they go, holy shit. Like, wow, that feels great. Like my pain is gone. Exactly. That's freaking 5 minutes. Imagine what's going to happen with your results, your pain, working with me 3 times a week for the next 6 months.
Yeah, I actually have a friend that's coming in to help me with that so that I don't forget it. she's been experiencing shoulder and back pain, and she goes to burn boot camp to train. So I told her, I was like, well, whenever you want, I was like, I need practice on it. Like, do you mind, just come over and, every so often we just do strengthening exercises and just focus on that. And we'll break it up, shoulder to back, and see how I can help you. And in the meantime, I get to practice it too because I don't want to forget it from the seminar, which was actually it brings me up to my question that I had for this week, particularly breathing. When it comes to breathing, so easy, but yet so hard to sometimes cue in different scenarios. Like, for example, even general population, I've got my hypertension client. Um, I've got my overweight clients. I've got like the older clients, the gestational clients. And then we at the gym that I work at, we do like collaborations with hiking and running groups. So obviously a lot of the girls, one of the things that they come up to me is like, how do we breathe when we run? And I mean, I know it as like a, runner that's just something that I would do. It's like I know, okay, it's kind of with your stride. Like once you get it with your stride, it's like easy for you. But how do I go about explaining those type of cues?
So a lot of that stuff is like for running specifically, I just put it back on the client and I'll say, how do you
Okay.
currently run? How does it feel? And they're never going to be like, oh, I breathe out and then breathe in. And it feels really, really bad all the time. They're just going to tell you what feels natural to them. And a lot of times that's the best way. Now,
Okay.
can we optimize that? Yeah, sure. Maybe we're doing a lot of chest breathing, which is secondary. Let's try to get the diaphragm involved a little bit. So, push the belly out. Getting some diaphragm, some expansion of the rib cage, and helping your client understand the difference between forced breathing and natural breathing. And
Hmm.
like when we're moving a weight, especially that you mentioned something with hypertension, which is
Hmm.
40 over 90, that's a serious thing. You've done it. So you see that, okay, the silent killer is what they call hypertension. So that artery that goes around the heart, the coronary artery, maybe it's a little blocked up. I don't know. If it were to be a little blocked up and you have high blood pressure and you have a lot of stress and you're not sleeping, it's like a ticking time bomb. And so
Hmm.
that's why we got to be very, very aware. And we do the proper screening via the PAR-Q to see if there was any type of numbness or shooting pain, because you want to refer them out to get that checked out. But in
Hmm.
this case, this has hypertension. We can never tell our clients to go off it, the medication. But it's just going to be, let's not exert ourselves while holding our breath, because when you do that, your blood pressure actually dips. So when I go
Hmm.
and I hold my breath, I have pressure going against what's called a closed glottis. It's in my throat. And then I
Hmm.
create this intra-abdominal pressure. So when I
Hmm.
create that pressure, it's actually really great for stabilizing my back. And if I'm going to do a really heavy lift, like a back squat, I'm actually pretending like I'm going underwater because I want to create that pressure because I'm an advanced lifter
Hmm.
for the stability. But for our clients, that's not really them. So we want to
Right.
encourage concentric breathing out, breathe in on the eccentric. So if I'm squatting, when I come down, because if you hold your breath, your blood pressure drops. So if I'm normally at 140 over 90 and I hold my blood pressure, it's going to drop. And then when I'm done with the exercise, now it's at 100 over 70. Then my heart has to pump real hard to get back to where it was at. And that's where you get
Hmm.
the lightheadedness, the dizziness, and you go, oh, you fall over.
Yeah.
Question NASM would ask would be, and which of the following systems is best for helping clients with hypertension? And that's where we have to know that peripheral heart action. It's just doing an upper body to a lower body, like doing a squat into a
Mm.
press. So knowing that vocabulary that they want you to know to
To know.
pass. But then just the realistic side of it, like when they're not going to ask you this, but it's like you wouldn't want to grip a lot of things. Like doing
Right.
farmer's walks with someone who has high blood pressure or doing a dead hang probably wouldn't be best. You want to get that foundation for a good month, get the heart strong, a little more conditioned.
Hmm.
And then in the future, you can start doing that stuff.
And she's actually been doing really good. So she hadn't had she had been taking her medication, and I guess like the dose she was given or the medication she was giving is no longer effective for her, so dipping it a little bit lower at times.
Mhm.
And then, of course, she has a very high stress job, so that also has an effect to it. But they told her to come off of it until they could get her in the office, unless her blood pressure is, way too high, then they have her monitoring it. And she's actually lowered it. Like now, every time I get her, she's at, well, I mean lower it, but it's in the normal range. It's 119, 117, 120, and sometimes she'll get in there with like 130 something, and by the time we're done, she's dipped into the low 20s, 17, 18 again. Um, and then when I push her a little bit more, then that's when she'll go up to 130, but it moves up just a couple points, and she feels good to the end through the entire session. So
I just wanted to end off on this right here.
yeah.
This is a good chart for people kind of to memorize, just knowing where the most common under and over are and what we do to them. So that was like the example I gave of quizzing that you could do. So
Hmm.
just have these, upper traps. We need to know, boom, overactive, lower traps, underactive. What do we do to overactive muscles? Foam roll and stretch, 20 to
Okay.
50 seconds. It's having an impact on the muscle
Yeah.
spindle. Think of stretch and spindle, Golgi tendon, tension.
Tension.
And, you could throw in the other vocab words, autogenic inhibition, reciprocal inhibition, and just get them familiar with those words. Because what happens is, and I know physiology, you take the NASM exam, you get a question, you lose your shit. So your heart rate spikes, you release a bunch of cortisol. Cortisol immediately blunts memorization. You can't remember shit. And so then your heart rate's high and you're, oh my God, I'm so dumb. I'm an idiot. I can't do this. Have all those negative thoughts. Like, no, just focus on knowing anterior tibialis, underactive, VMO, underactive, glute max and med, underactive, middle traps, lower traps, underactive, deep cervical flexors, underactive. What do we do to under? We strengthen. We're going to do that with a 4-2-1-1 tempo. Know the most common exercise they're going to have you do. Any type of
Another
stuff is going to be your go-to, the 4-2-1-1 tempo. And remember, underactive is weak, overactive is short. And we want to lengthen the short ones. We got to strengthen the underactive.
Yeah, another thing that I tell them that to make sure they understand which one's the higher part and lower part, so superior and inferior of the body, because I think that's what helped me a lot on some of those that did make me panic. I did the process of elimination, and sometimes it was like 50-50, and I was like, oh my God, was it a, upper body or lower body? And then that like completely sealed the deal for me. And it's funny that you say that first 5 minutes of the call, that was me. Cortisol spiked. I lost everything I learned.
That's how it works though. So now, and we'll just continue doing these. I would say the emphasis today would be kind of like that PDF, and I can even